Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I've got myself and Emmanuel Ezekiel. You should be able to see us as well. Excuse me if I keep looking down. I have to look at my screen, not the camera. We've got a few on. There's a few more joining as well. So you can see in the chat box, I've just put a message there to say, if you can hear us and see us, please say yes in the chat box. And that'll be good. Once we have that confirmation, we can get going. I will be sharing my screen. Yes, good, excellent. Hello, Shania. Hello, everyone. Good, loud and clear. Good, great. Okay, what we'll do is we'll get started. There will be people who turn up late, but you'll get the full benefit for it. So I'm just going to share my screen. My screen. There we go. And we share. There we go. So you should be able to see a big Wealth and Success Academy on your screen that says property development using Opium, Ashley Banfield, property investor mentor, and Emmanuel Ezekiel, expert developer and mindset coach. Should be able to see that. So if you can please again just say yes, that'll be good. Okay, great. Looking good. Thank you. So myself and Emmanuel have put this webinar together. We haven't done much of this in the past, but we wanted to start sharing our experiences from what we've done and what we're doing. And one of the key subjects here tonight that Emmanuel will talk about is the pub that he purchased with none of his own money and has now turned it into, it's about 2.29 million as a GDV. Obviously, there's profit in that as well. So Emmanuel will talk through that within about the next half an hour, I'd say. So we'll get to that point. So the reason that Emmanuel and I do this is because we like to help people. And we've helped a lot of students in the last 2 years together. We met about 2.5 years ago. So we like to help people. And just this week, we've been helping students of ours. We expect nothing in return for that, obviously, but we're just helping to train them to learn how to deal with vendors, talk to them direct, some of the things to say and things not to say, and obviously have two of these and one of these. And at the end, if we have time, we'll tell you about some of our experiences through this week as well. Quite comical, but again, for our student, it could be many hundreds of thousands of pounds profit. And he's currently in New York at the moment. I'm not sure if he's listening tonight. He may actually be on here as well from New York. Hello, Tom, if you are. So myself, a little bit about me, for those who don't know. Moved to England from Australia in 2003, started investing in property in 2006 with absolutely no money whatsoever. I actually was using lots of Mortgage Express stuff when it was really easy to get money, and I was getting paid to actually buy properties, so it was quite easy. Things are a little bit more complicated now, and you need to have the expertise and knowledge to be able to do it right, because we do hear a lot of people starting out in property development at the moment and in the last year or so, and they don't have that up-to-date knowledge and they're falling flat on their face, some of them in a lot of debt, and that's what we don't want to see. So in 2003, I also started a rent-to-rent portfolio using HMOs and also service accommodation. As you can see, almost £26,000 per month in income from there, so we can talk to you about making income quickly from property as well. And I've got many students now who quit their day job, some over £30,000 a month, so actually making more than me from rent to rent, but that's their sole strategy. I've got various properties of all types, control most of them through either lease options or purchase options, which is my favorite way of doing property because it costs you very little money, and also involved in some developments as well, and getting involved more now with Emmanuel in some developments as well. So I'll tell you a little bit about Emmanuel as well. As you can see him on screen probably, or you have seen him on screen. He's been investing in property. I'm being kind for over 25 years. It's probably well over that. And again, he started with zero or very little of his own money. He now has a portfolio worth in excess of £50 million, of which it's broken up into about 30 million of his own property, and the other 20 million is with joint venture partners. And that's what we're going to talk to you about tonight as well, about joint venture partners. And as you can see, Emmanuel's well qualified to be able to do that. He also had one of the biggest mortgage companies in the UK as well. And that was very successful. And he can tell you a little bit more about that at the end if we have time. So he knows a little bit about mortgages as well. And he does multiple developments a year, not crazy stuff. I'm not talking 20 or 30. I'm talking maybe 5 or 6. But these make at least, £400,000 or £500,000 per development. And he spends a lot of time in Thailand each year or in the States last year. So he travels a lot. So trying to nail him down is one of my challenges. He's got various properties of all types, being residential, commercial mix, or commercial. And again, he can tell you about some of those deals as well. Obviously, the pub is a commercial to residential, so we can tell you about that one. He controls various properties as well. One of his best deals that he got was just a guy doing some work at his house, had a chat about property. He ended up buying 9 of his houses for £10 on simple lease options, and these could be worth multi-millions of pounds in the next few years. And also does developments, as we said there. And one of the good things about Emmanuel is also a very good mindset coach. He's been trained by some of the biggest names in the States, like Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy, I think it is, T. Harv Eker, all of these people you have heard. Brian Tracy has even endorsed one of his books around financial matters as well. So you're in good hands here. So let's carry on. So the key subject here tonight is about how to build a property portfolio with none of your own money. Now, the reason we're doing this is because that most people who want to get into property development want to get into it because they don't have any money and they want to make a lot of money. Now, that can be quite risky because you don't have the experience, you don't have the knowledge. So again, you need to work with somebody, and that's why I work with Emmanuel. He has more knowledge than I do on development. So we work together, and I get information from him. He gets information from me about other things like rent to rent and service accommodation, what have you. So we want to make sure that we tell you the right way to be able to do this with none of your own money. And some people may, we may have some skeptics here who say that's impossible. It's not impossible. Emmanuel does this all day, every day. Richard Branson, when he invests in other companies, that type of thing, he doesn't use a lot of his own money, if any of his own money. When they buy big companies, it's usually other people's money. The stock market is all using our money. All the mums and dads invested. There's a majority of people who buy into these companies. So it's always other people's money. So let's click on. So why property? Just quickly, you can see from the chart here that from 1952, properties were worth, 4 or 5 grand there by the look at things. And up to Q4 2015, this is the latest stats I could get. You're looking at the average price of around about £200,000 there. And there was a big dip after 2007, which is obviously the most famous crash that we've had there, followed by the recession, which was fairly flat. And then after that, after 4 years or so, it started to pump up again. So property is always on the move. And historically, it's going up. So as you can see there. So there's multiple strategies. We've only mentioned a couple, like service accommodation for cash flow. We've mentioned rent-to-rent HMOs for cash flow, rent-to-rent accommodation. We've mentioned developments, but there's all sorts of different stuff, again, around developments and what type of properties you get into. And then there's lease options, there's purchase options, all types of things. There's sourcing. So it depends which one will fit you and what your actual goals are. So it can create long-term wealth. It's not going to create wealth quickly. Cash flow we can create quickly, but to be able to go to the next step and create wealth, you need to learn another set of rules. And it is all basically down to rules. Cash flow, obviously, get paid to buy a property in some cases. 0 deposits. One deal can make you. And when we talk about that is, your first deal, if you're going to be lucky, and I say lucky, can make you, but you want to start nice and easily. Don't go for the big elephant gun yet. On average, you can see here, over those sort of over the chart there, that the average property doubles every 10 years. Although at the moment, I think it's on about 12 and a half years at the moment. That's
actually, if I can just interject about
yes.
why. So you've seen here there's multiple different strategies in property, and that's true. And that's why property is such a great business to be in, because as the market changes and evolves, you can actually change your strategy as to what's going to be most profitable at that particular time. So in the current market, there's a number of different strategies that you can use, and all of them can actually dovetail into each other. So the long-term wealth is really about property and holding it for the long term. We know that over a period of time, sometimes it's 8 years, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 12, it might be 15 or 20 years. Property on average doubles in the UK. That's probably right for about 80% of the UK market. There's a few anomalies in that there's some areas that aren't, but that sort of research is very easy to dictate. In terms of cash flow, there are so many different strategies now that you can tap into property that are relatively new in the marketplace. So one is HMO, house and multiple occupation. That gives you the ability to maximise the rent by renting each room compared to a single let. You've also got the rent-to-rent strategy, which is a hybrid of the HMO, and you've now got service accommodation. So you've got three amazing strategies that you can actually do that. There's a few other strategies to do with cash flow, which we won't cover in too much detail today, but one of the pubs that I actually have is effectively rented out and looked after by guardians. So while I'm actually waiting for planning permission, I actually receive an income at the same time. So there's lots of different strategies around cash flow. Now, where you've said you get paid to buy a property, a real property investor will always know that you make money when you buy. You always make money when you buy, not when you sell. You make more money when you sell, or you realize your profit when you sell, but you actually make money when you buy. And that's what we mean by that is you buy right. You buy below market value, or you buy with the ability to add value on day one. That's what we mean about getting paid. In the olden days, when you had things like Mortgage Express, you really did get paid on day one. You could buy a property that was worth 100,000. You could actually buy it for maybe 70 or 75,000. You could then mortgage the following day, or even sometimes the same day, for 100,000, get all your money back. Plus, when you were remortgaging 85% loan to value, you'd get another £5,000 or £10,000 cash back. And I did that on a number of properties and got some substantial cash backs. It's more difficult to do that kind of strategy now, but it's not unusual if you do it properly. Zero deposits, that's still very much in the marketplace, and we'll talk in more detail about how you can buy a property with zero deposit. Now, the zero deposit doesn't mean you don't have to put a deposit, it just means that you don't have to come up with a deposit. And if you actually get a great development, one deal can certainly make you. You can make £200,000, £300,000, £400,000. Most people that are earning 25 to 40,000, that's 5 to 10 years worth of income in 1 year, in one development. That is life changing. So I just wanted to cover a couple of those bits because property is such an amazing marketplace. If you're in it and you participate in it, it's a real business. So I just thought I'd add that at this point.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Great stuff. Thanks. Okay, so let's look at a couple of ways to buy property. So we look at high yield build or buy to keep. So when we say buy to keep or build to keep, it means you're going to go and find some land and build something, or you may renovate something, or you may extend something. And either way, you're going to create some cash flow there for yourself. So generally in low cost areas where rental demand is high is where you're going to get the highest yield. Now, some people will say, yes, I want to buy up north. I want to go up north. And please, you must be very careful about buying up north because, you know, some people might go to Newcastle, etc. It's a long way to go for when something goes wrong, and it will absolutely kill you. I know there's lots of people out there who promote this. There is a way you can do it, and we'll cover that off next. So you can buy HMOs, house of multiple occupancy, quite good income. But again, sometimes these can be fairly expensive, especially if you're buying them based on the actual commercial value, especially inside the M25 where they can be quite high. Although within the M25 and closer into London, HMOs normally value higher at bricks and mortar value. Microflats is great. Emmanuel's got a fantastic development that he's finished, where he owns the whole property, so it's microflats, so it's not actually HMOing it. So each microflat is rented out, and it's actually, I think, twice as much the income, is that right, as what you would get as an HMO, Emmanuel?
It is twice as much as you would get as a HMO.
So don't get tied up in whatever the trends are and what everyone else is sprouting out there. You know, HMOs. People come to me all the time, want to buy HMOs, want to do this. And I say to them, why do you want to buy an HMO? They say for cash flow. And I said, but there are better ways to get cash flow than just a stock standard HMO. And it's much easier to manage as well. So microflats is probably a good one to look at if you're looking at HMOs. You will need a local manager to manage your property if you're buying in the north where properties are cheap. You will need somebody there on the ground who can take a phone call at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, whatever. But you also need to, that's once you're managing the property and renting the property out. But you need to be careful, because if you're going to buying a property and most of them are heaps of crap that you buy so that you can add some value or at least do it up. And, you might spend anywhere between £2,000 and £10,000 or £12,000 doing up the property. I wouldn't want to be spending any more than that in the north, because the properties you might be buying for about £60,000, so you don't want to overcapitalise. But then what you've got to remember is the areas that you're buying in, because there's such high rental demands because people can't afford to buy the properties. If you're thinking of only keeping this for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then you may be finding it very hard to sell the property and actually make a profit at all, especially get your money back from what you've spent and what you've actually invested into the property. So this is very much a long-term, 15, 20-year long-term strategy. If you want to buy in the north, there are far better ways to buy than this. Emmanuel talks about the fast lane, the middle lane, and the slow lane. Prefers to operate in the middle lane and in and around big cities, not in and around areas where things are just cheap. Some people invested in places like Great Yarmouth or up in the north in some coastal areas and lower stuff than Suffolk and that type of thing. And they're very hard areas to get the right tenants, because there's a very different demographic in those places. So it's going to be much harder to actually manage tenants. So be aware of that. Can be tough, as we said, to be able to sell in the north as well once you have the property. But one thing you can do in some of these areas, because the councils and charities operate in these areas because they are lower demographic and lower income areas, you can actually speak to the council, speak to local charities, and they will actually take your property off you for around 4, 5, sometimes longer, 5 years. And they will actually, it's kind of a rent to rent for the council, if you like. So they'll take your property off and manage it and look after it entirely, and you get the same amount of rent each and every month. So that can be a good way to do it. So there's a little tip there. So lower yield but higher capital return. Now, this is not completely true, this statement. Normally found where prices are higher and rental demand is lower, because in places like London, in certain areas in London, obviously rental demand is still high in some of those areas, although we've seen from numbers and stats in the last 6 to 7 months that rentals have actually started to come down a little bit within London. Whether that's an effect of Brexit or whatever it is, nobody seems to be able to put their finger on it. But hey, that's one of the big things that's happening right now, right? So it can be found direct to vendor too, if you know where to look. And Priya's just put up here that she's struggling to find BMV property or below market value property. If you can find property in London where you can add value to, it doesn't necessarily have to be, the 25, 30% below market value where you would get outside the M25 and further up north. There are ways that you can use land registry, and you can use, map search and that type of thing. And this is one thing that we do on our course. We teach you how to do this and how to find.
I would like to cover what Chris talked about BMV, which is below market value. And below market value properties are not found every day. However, there's lots of below market value properties, and you need to know what to look for, where they are, and who's going to be selling these properties. A BMV property is where somebody is motivated. The word is motivated to sell their property. And there's lots of reasons why somebody would be motivated to sell their property. So one is ill health. Two is divorce. Three is relocation. These are just three key areas. So people that are motivated, that need to move quickly, will sell you their property below the current market value. And let me explain why. If they sell the normal way through an agent, it could take them 3 to 6 months to sell. By the time they find a buyer, go through the whole process, the mortgage may or may not get approved. So if people need the money fast, the word is fast. So if they're motivated and they need the money fast, that's where you're able to negotiate a below market value. Now, there are lots of ways to do below market value, and there's lots of strategies around it. So one is where you get a discounted price. So they give you 5, 10, 15% off, maybe up to 25% depending on the area. So in London, it's going to be difficult for you to find below market property that's more than about 10% off. Let me explain why. What's changed over the last few years, especially since. So if a property was down, you could get 10% off. That's only 2,000. But that same property is 400,000.
You're breaking up there, Emmanuel, quite a bit, mate. You're breaking up quite a bit. I'm not sure if you can still hear me.
I was running. The person next to me told me about their friend that was going through a breakup of relationship. They couldn't stay in the same house together. They couldn't stand each other. And this is while I was just running. And that's because people know what I do. They discussed it with me. And within 48 hours, we'd actually done that deal. And again, I bought that deal below market value. And I bought it on a lease option, which I will discuss in more detail. Property, 200,000 for 100. Those are available. They're still around, but it's nowhere to look for them. So I hope that covers that little bit for you about B&B.
Thank you. You're breaking up quite a bit there, mate. I don't know if there's anyone in your house who's maybe streaming video or anything, but if you can ask them maybe to turn off their video or whatever they're doing. And you broke up quite a bit there, but we got the gist of it. Thanks. So, yeah, so agents can find deals for you too, but the competition is going to be very high. You know, half a dozen people go to a course on a weekend, or 100 people go to a course, or 200 people come onto a course. Then what you're going to find is that they're all going to go out, and if they're telling you to do the same thing with agents each time, then, you know, your competition out there, and agents are privy to it now. I know a lot of agents that I've met through the years, and I'm good friends with agents now. And quite frankly, they just sit there and sometimes they laugh and have a bit of a competition, like who's going to walk through the door today? You know, who's going to walk in? Is it going to be green? Is it going to be greener than green? And they basically have bets on, you know, what's going to happen. And they try to actually dissuade you, or you know, they'll ask you questions like, okay, so how much cash you got in the bank? What do you this? What do you got that? And they'll try and test it. So just be aware of going into agents and knocking on the doors and say, hi, can I have some deals? I'm a cash buyer, when you're not a cash buyer. You know, you need to be honest, you need to be open and say to them, look, you know, I'm fairly new, I need some help. You don't need to go out there and make out that you're the greatest developer in the world, because believe it or not, these guys actually deal with very experienced developers. So you're going to get crucified if you start, you know, let's say it, bullshitting to people. You know, I have agents who come to me all the time saying, I've got this, I've got that. But, you know, even in my area for service accommodation, I have two particular agents who will phone me up. And one said to me the other day, last week, and said, hi, Ash, I've got this property. It's just come on. Turns out it's the boss's daughter's. Just bought this flat. Do you want it? Yes. What is it? You know, my business partner's out there today measuring up, make sure we've got the right beds. He puts tape down for me. He takes a video. This is a king. This is a queen. This is where the king will fit, etc. So this agency said, "When we put an offer in," I said, "Yeah." He said, "Look, you know, if you can do this, I'll do this, and I'll get you a lower offer. No problem. You know that. You go for it. Put the offer in." Then he sends me the deal today, the paperwork, and says it's all done. So that will cash flow us about £1,200 to £1,500 a month. Nice little deal. And what have I had to do for it? This, the agent. You know, I'm leveraging their time. So you need to have a good relationship with agents. And trust me, you walk into 20, maybe 20 hate you. You walk into number 21 and 22, they love you. Not everyone's going to love you. So you need to have sometimes not a thick skin, but be fairly tenacious and just keep going. So various opportunities out there, including, you know, finding some land, and we can show you how to find land as well and build new properties on them. More importantly, we show you how to do the analysis. You know, if I bring a deal to Emmanuel and say, "What do you think of this?" He'll laugh and say, "Where's the deal analysis?" And our deal analysis is a Excel spreadsheet of about 2 full-size pages that an accountant put together for Emmanuel. So it's all fully automatic, but it's got every single cost that you put in there. It's not just taking a percentage of 10, 15, 20% of costs, and that's what's, you know, in a fag packet, and it might be 10 or 15 grand, because every single deal is completely different, and sometimes deals come up with surprises. So you need to be aware of this. And then there's refurbs, and then you can extend the property, or you can do a conversion. So one that we're working on at the moment, a student of ours, we're helping her and her mother convert a bungalow into a chalet, and that chalet will then, you know, that extra height will then give them sea views down in the pool. So, you know, that's a small deal, as Emmanuel calls it, but it's about, between us all, it's about £127,000 profit. So nice little deal. And again, it's because these people know what we do, they trust us, they know how we operate, and they're not buying into property with us, they're buying into us as people. So this is what you need to build yourself a brand, and brand yourself to do this. So adding value to the original purchase or your option is the key where we can make money. And again, with your deal analysis, you need to make sure that all the numbers are right. You know, property is about people and money, as you're probably hearing now. People and numbers. So never touching the property. This is what I love. So people say, "Ash, you're in property. Why don't you like touching property?" Well, let me tell you. Controlling but never owning property, and therefore never needing finance, is a simple way to make money from property. You do not ever have to go into a bank. You don't have to ask anyone for money. You don't need deposits. Yes, you're going to need £1 to seal the deal. One that Emmanuel and I, again, a £300,000 nursing home, ex-nursing home, sealed for £1, and that now has a GDV of 1.8 million, and the profit in that is just under or just over £1 million. Not bad. And none of this was using any money, any of Emmanuel's own money. Purchase options or lease options are most common out there. There are other things like sandwich options and that type of thing. But if you're starting out, you look at purchase and lease options. They're probably the most straightforward compared to the others. But when I say straightforward, you still need to have the knowledge about and how to execute these. But more importantly, how to sell these, if you like, to vendors. You can make them assignable to another person or another company as well. Most people are buying in SPVs now to avoid clause 24 if they're going to keep the properties. And it's easy to joint venture with vendors. So just this week, Emmanuel and I, and it was a long day. We started at 7 o'clock and I finished about 10 o'clock at night. And we were in London. We went to Kent. And we saw some interesting characters, didn't we, Emmanuel?
We sure did.
So one was he was in the police force for 30 years, ex-barrister as well, is also a barrister. And he could really talk. And we were there for an hour and a half. And for the first hour, we just let him talk all about himself, etc., building that rapport. It was only really in the last sort of 15 minutes that did we tag down. And initially, when we were there, he said, "Look, I don't know why here. I don't want to do anything." And at the end of that, after he did all the talking, he then told us that, yes, I like those two options. I'm ready to go forward and do something here. And then there was another one where the neighbors, the neighbor had to sell, and they had to sell together because they had big plots at the back. So it's kind of title splitting, if you like. And it's two vendors that you're trying to convince. And we spoke to the first guy, and he's, that was again an hour and a half. And Emmanuel knows them inside out, and they know him inside out now, and they built that trust. And then we had to go to the local fish and chip shop and speak to another guy who was a neighbor, and he's all for it too. So we've got two vendors who are ready to go. And again, we did this for one of our students. So there's a fair bit of profit in there for them. So what we've done is broken the ice, if you like, with the vendors. And that can sometimes be the hardest thing to do. Executing the actual strategy, if you like, getting a solicitor to write things up, that's the easy bit. The hardest bit is initially when you go out and meet these people. And we teach you a lot about that on our course. And again, with Emmanuel being a fully trained mindset coach, he can certainly help with that. And he's helped me a lot with that with the last 2 years. And it's very, very profitable. That we like the best. So creative finance. Let's get on to this. Non-standard property financing. So we're not talking about going into the banks, knocking on their door and say, Mr. Bank Manager, can I have 350 grand, 550 grand, 1.5 million? Yes, sure, Ashley. How much income do you have, and can you service this loan? And do you have the right deposit, and what experience, and what's your history and development? Oh, yeah, I have none of those. Okay, bye-bye. That's going to make it very hard for most people out there. I'm talking 95% of people. So having little or no money will make it almost impossible to get a loan from a bank. Probably pretty much impossible, unless you have some sort of guarantor with you or something like that. But for yourself, it's not going to work. And you're not going to be able to finance your property portfolio, whether it's development finance or whatever it might be. So the entrepreneurs out there, they are the new bank. And, Emmanuel goes to the gym, and he probably raises, I don't know, on average, a couple of £1 million a year just by going to the gym, networking. People ask him what he does. He tells him what he does. And then they say, how can I be a part of that? We don't go to people and say, hi, can, cap in hand, have you got some money, please? Because it just doesn't work. People need to buy into you first. So you can see a pattern here. It's all about you as a person. So bridging finance, that's a good way to do things, but it needs to be strictly short term, because you could be paying up to 3% or more per month, depending on your experience and your history. And if you haven't got any, those are the sort of numbers that you're going to be paying. And 3% doesn't sound like a lot, but 3% a month on 100 grand, that starts to add up, especially if you don't have any money. So the most effective and realistically achievable strategy is a simple personal loan. And it's relatively unaffected by the Financial Conduct Authority regs, which is all around, I won't get into today, it's all around sophisticated investors and that type of thing, and there's minimum values. So if we're talking personal loan, it's much easier. You don't start to offer 20, 30, 40, 50% of the deal, because then you start to get into the FCA rules and regs. So more on creative finance. So lending is made out there for those with experience and track records, whether you're going to buy your own house or you're going to do development. If you want to buy your own house, they're going to want a track record of employment. They're going to want a track record of savings, that type of thing. No CCJs, clean as a whistle, that type of thing. And many of you have probably gone to the banks and been turned down. So there's many personal finances. Invest in a person. So again, this is down to you as a person. You need to know how to network. You don't go out there with balloons hanging off the top of your head. I need money. I've got a deal. I need this, blah, blah, blah. You need to start interacting with people, and interacting obviously with people who have the ability to be able to invest. It may be people that you meet at local business events, not strictly property events, because a lot of people who go to property events are more so the people looking for money, if you like. So you need to sort of break out of there and go to different areas. And again, you know, Manuel goes to the gym. I always tell everyone that I meet about what I do, and you know, everyone is interested in property. And once you know, if you can articulate what you do and how it works, then you know, kind of thing like, you know, we help investors, you know, make an extra 20% on their money, or 10% or 15%, whatever it might be. You never ever set a percentage, because you want the investor to set that percentage, because they may have a percentage in their mind of 5% and you've offered them 10%. And the banks at the moment are offering what, 1 or 2% interest if you hold your money in the bank, if you're lucky. So anything that we do, they could double their money, minimum. So non-sophisticated investors are more open to more flexible terms. So it may be that you know, banks are definitely not flexible. And when I say flexible, you know, like I say, they could come up and say, look, you know, I just want 3 or 4 or 5% on my money. Some will ask for 12 or 15, which if there's enough profit in the property and it's a quick deal, and it could just be a joint venture deal where you're not paying any stamp duty or anything like that. You're not actually paying for the land, or you're not paying for the property. You're just getting the actual work or the build financed out. So that can, you know, it's a lot. They can be a lot more flexible with the terms there, and there's a lot less risk because you have a base there that's already provided. Many personal loans out there can be sought for 5 to 10%, helping you purchase a refurb. The banks are paying you at the moment 1 to 2% interest right now, which is ridiculous. So when I talk about, you know, personal loans can be sought for 5 to 10%, you know, we have people who will loan us money between 5 and 10%. There is somebody who knocks on my door every day and say, like, I can give it to you for 20%. I'm like, whoa, what? 20% is probably a bit high for me. But then, you know, if he then says to me, bring a deal to me. So I'll take a deal to him. He said, okay, let's finance it. And this guy builds over 600 homes a year of his own. So top secret. You can start now if you want to start now. There is no excuse. There is plenty of money out there from entrepreneurs or people who work in big paid jobs, and they sit in their office 10, 12 hours a day. They don't have any time to get into property, but sometimes their ego, they want to be able to tell people that I have this development going on, I have this development, I have these properties. And you could be their person who takes care of that for them. And you get paid handsomely for it as well.
Ash, can I just
carry on, go.
This is the truth, and this is what happens in the property market. The people that are doing deals on a regular basis just don't use their money. Just that's how it is. So the more you have, the less you use of your own money. So if you go right at the top end of the scale, people like Alan Sugar, Donald Trump, they just don't use their own money. The banks are falling over themselves to give them the money that they actually need, because they know how to buy right, they know how to buy below market value, and they know how to add value. But this is what's happening in the marketplace right now. So I'd like to I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and if you can just respond and ask the question so I get an idea how many of you have heard of it before. So how many of you have heard of things like crowdfunding? A simple hands up yes would be good to actually see. So crowdfunding is basically a platform where you can actually raise money for your own development at very, very competitive rates, between 6 and 10%. That's all of the money that you need. I mean, all of the money to buy and to refurbish it. And the more experience you have, the faster it is. Some property deals are being funded within 24 to 48 hours, based on your track record, based on your experience, based on you being able to deliver and say and do what you say. So that's just one very simple way of raising money. So crowdfunding is one of them. One that I use on a regular basis is people's pensions. I show people how to access their pensions right now and get a much better return, between 50 and 100% more than what they're currently getting. That's an easy sell for most people whose pensions are locked away in their pension that they can't tap in until they're 55 or 60. So Ashley talked about bridging finance. Bridging finance, again, is another great way of using what I call the drug I use, opium, other people's money. So they will lend you anywhere between 70-75% of the purchase price and also the refurbishment cost. And some bridging finance companies will actually lend you on the full GDV, that's the gross development value. So you could actually buy a deal where you've got added value, where you can actually buy and get the whole deal funded. The other one that I use on a regular basis, and Ashley saw this the other day when we were out together, is I often get the vendor that we're buying from to fund the deal for me. You might say, well, why would somebody want to do that? Well, let me explain why somebody might want to do that. Well, first and foremost, the vendor doesn't actually give me the money. They just keep the value of their property in the deal. So let's say I'm buying something for $500,000 and they keep the $500,000 into the actual project until the end. I just say to them, I'm going to be borrowing the money from the bank anyway, between 6 and 10%. How about I give you 6 to 10% on that $500,000 for as long as I need it, which is typically 12 to 18 months. A lot of vendors are open to that. That's more money for them because it's their own residential property. They pay no further capital gains because it goes into the purchase price. It's part of the actual deal. It's a great, great deal for them. Other one is personal finance, personal loan. Ashley talked about personal loan. You can get a personal loan at very attractive rates. One of my clients that I showed when I had the mortgage business bought 25 properties on their credit card. They bought below market value, they refinanced and kept doing that on their credit card. At one point, they had over £150,000 on their credit card. But you know what? It's being serviced by all the actual rental income. That was a great deal for them. So if you understand finance, you understand how to get leverage through finance, and you know how to attract the best rates, you can buy property, whether it be buy to let, whether it be HMO, rent to rent, service accommodation, development, by actually finding finance alternatively. So, and just so you get an idea, there's lots of people out there that high net worth clients that, as Ashley said, are getting between 0.5%, if they're lucky, 3%. You see government bonds on a regular basis where they're giving 2 or 3%. If you can give somebody 100 or 200 times that, so 100 times is 6%, 200 times is 9%. A lot of people will actually bite your arm off. So there's money out there all the time. So I hope that just talks a little bit more about how you can become creative. Okay.
Brilliant.
Linda said you said it's taking you 2 years to find one. It's not easy out there. Find one what? Find one joint venture?
Okay.
Find one property? I'm not quite sure what the question is.
Okay, so I'll tell you what it is. So that's from Linda. She said that I have someone who's interested in me and what my ethos is, but I'm a bit nervous. I'm not sure whether he wants to fund my projects and at what rate. And then she's carried on to say, I'm flattered by this offer, but it has taken me 2 years to find one. And it's not easy out there and she's talking about building your team as well. So obviously Linda's taken 2 years to be able to find somebody. So it may be that you've been looking for somebody instead of talking about what you do is. I'm not sure, but Emmanuel, you may want to expand on that.
Yeah, I would like to expand on that. You know, when you're trying to build your team and build your expertise, there is no faster way of doing it than other with somebody that's already done it. You know, so many people try and do everything themselves. You know, I've always been part of teams. The word team means together, everyone achieves more. I don't believe I have all the skills that's needed to do all the things. I certainly don't have the time either. So I leverage the things that I'm really good at with other people. So I will participate. So the easiest way for me to get into developments at the start was to learn from somebody else. And that's something I should really advocate that you do. Find people that you can joint venture with where you can learn and build your knowledge and build your expertise. Because the more knowledge you build, the more expertise you have, the more attractive that you become, one to the banks, one to private funding, also to agents and people offering you deals. The more that you do, the more that you know and the more things come your way. It's just a numbers game. In 2 years isn't a long period of time, but if you would have actually tapped in. So how many of you think you might be able to do a little bit better if you joint ventured with Ashley or me? Where we have our own architects, our own surveyors, our own planning consultants, our own finance. Do you think you might be able to accelerate what you're doing already? Show of hands if you think that might be possible. Yes, you would. It's just common sense. You actually joint venture with somebody who's really good at what they're doing, and you'll learn a lot more. A lot of people out there try and do everything themselves. And when you're doing developments, there's a lot of things that you have to take into account, which most people don't. And that's how they fall over. And they fall over a number of ways and a number of times throughout a project. So one is the buying price. Then you got the cost. Then you got the planning and how long the planning is going to take. And then your financing, then your exit strategy, then your specification. There's so many different steps involved in doing, whether it be a simple refurbishment or an extensive development where you actually need somebody to help you. So if you've already done it, that's great. Then the finance is the easy part. But if you haven't done it from start to finish, whenever you think something's going to go easy, it never does. And having people that you can actually tap into, that you can actually pool your knowledge and resources, makes all the difference. So again, if you have off-market deals, you can approach either Ashley or myself. We're here to help, by the way. So if we make money, you make money, and vice versa. That's why we're here. You know, Absolutely. We're not just keeping the goodness of our heart, although you think we are. We're here because we really want to help. And the more people we help, the more money we make. The more people you help, the more money you make. You know, Apple helped lots of people. That's why they make so much money. They're in the business of helping people. The byproduct is they make a lot of money, but they help a lot of people. And that's what we're here to do as well, is to help you and to leverage our time, our knowledge, our information through you guys. That's how we all make more money.
We've had a couple of questions here that from some various people that you know, how do we find these deals? Why do people want to joint venture with us? You know, where do we find these deals, etc. So, you know what, I thought the same thing when I first started, when I was completely green to property. I thought, how do I do this? So I worked with people, I went out with people, like even with Emmanuel, you know, yesterday, when we went out to these deals, it was many hours getting stuck in traffic, etc. I could have said to myself, oh, what a bloody waste of time. I'm not getting anything out of this. But to be able to go and sit with Emmanuel and work together, it's priceless. You can't put a price on that. You know, many people would pay many thousands of pounds to be able to do that with Emmanuel, you know, each and every day. But Emmanuel doesn't do those type of things. He likes to help other people, and that's part of his culture and part of his makeup and his ethos as well. And, you know, it's part of mine, and it's becoming much stronger now because I'm working with Emmanuel. And I love it. It's fantastic. And, you know, I'm just a sponge when I go out there and listen to these things and do these things. And it means that I can then help other people that are close to me, family and friends, and, you know, give them advice. And we've been doing this for a long time now. And still, I learn something new all the time. Property is a dynamic business. It is constantly moving. You cannot just learn one thing and then think that's going to be the way it is for the next 5-10 years or the next 20 or 30 years. It may change every year, every 18 months, every 2 years, which is why I surround myself with people like Emmanuel, because, you know, Emmanuel does most of his stuff in London, and I do my stuff outside of London. I've got a friend up here that I know who's now made £100 million from property. He has £100 million cash in his bank. And, you know, we go out for dinner every now and then, and I learn so much from him. And it's not a case of me saying to him, oh, can you give me some money? You got lots of money. That would just be so rude. And it would be disrespectful to do that. But we keep talking about deals. And then the other day he said to me, look, that sounds like a good deal. Maybe I can get involved. And I said, yeah, let's talk. Let's talk more. So yeah, you just need to start to surround yourself with people like this. And I don't mean like going to property meetings and that type of thing where, you know, I've been to these and I don't really go to many anymore, simply because I was just overwhelmed by all the people saying, I've got this deal, I've got that deal, and all the bloody experts in the world who had absolutely nothing. And to me, that was a waste of time. So I stopped doing that. And I find more now with the people around me and the network around me. Emmanuel's going to know, 20, 30, 40 people that he connects to on a constant sort of regular basis. So because I'm talking and networking with Emmanuel, I'll get to meet those people. And then those people have another 10, 20, 30 people, and it just becomes exponential. So you just need to start talking about everything that you do and what you're interested in. You've got to be passionate about it, because if you sit there and talk to somebody and you can see the shit start to glaze over their eyes, you're not passionate about what you do. You're just boring the crap out of people. So let's have a little Q&A. Emmanuel, let's give the big prize today, and that is, I want you to please run through the pub deal within about 10 minutes, starting from how you found a deal, because a lot of people are saying, hey, how did you find a deal? Why would these people JV with us? And where the hell did you get the money?
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's do one at a time, shall we? So how did I find the deal? Well, funnily enough, I actually am in property, and a lot of people know I'm in property. And I have a contact that has a very good contact within the pub network. And they bought a parcel of pubs. So they bought about 10 or 12 pubs. They couldn't complete on all of them. So they sold one of the pubs to me. And yes, they made a profit. So they made about 50K on the pub. I bought it for $500,000. They bought it for 450. They didn't complete on the contract. They just sold it to me. So they made, just by actually buying this parcel of pubs, 50K more or less overnight. So not a bad return for them, not even actually holding the property, just actually having the contract. They controlled the contract, and they knew how to actually make that parcel more valuable by selling them up as individual bits and pieces. By the way, that's no different to buying a block of flats that's on one freehold, and then you creating separate leases and selling each flat off separately. So I bought the actual pub through a contact of mine that was effectively sub-selling that particular pub. It didn't have planning. I spoke to my architect, who felt that was a very strong viability on the pub to convert it into apartments. So I had a couple of contacts of mine. One of my contacts had the money, which the pub was just over, it was $500,000, I think 501. And they lent the whole money to buy the pub, including stamp duty and all legal costs. And we've done a joint venture. I won't go through the actual specific amount, so that wouldn't be fair to them on here. But we did a joint venture where they lent all the actual money. When we actually went through the planning application, we had a few hiccups with the actual planners. They wanted us to retain the pub. So there's a lot of pubs or a lot of councils that want you to keep the pub services in the area because they want the amenities to still be there. So by speaking to my architect and my planning consultant, we understood the planning rules, and part of the planning rules were they wanted to keep the pub, so we were clever. So we've done it as a split application. So we've put the application for the upper parts, and we've got that planning. So we've got the upper parts, and then we're now just putting together the second part of the actual report through my planner and through my planning consultant to get the lower part. So we're converting that pub into 6 apartments. We bought it for 500,000. The GDV is 2.3 million. The build cost is around about 500,000. The whole cost is about 50,000. So there's still a great amount of profit in that particular deal. We've had to change the design a couple of times in conjunction with the planners. But again, if you've got the right project and you've got the right team behind you, so I wouldn't have bought that pub without speaking to my architect and my planning consultant, where they were pretty much sure that we were going to get planning. They didn't know how long it was going to take, because you can never tell with some planners. In fact, it took us over 9 months just to get to committee, that each month the actual planners kept moving the planning date. So that took quite a long time to actually get to that particular stage. However, by using my professionals that I tap into. So I don't need to know all the planning laws. I just need to employ the people that know the planning laws. Same as my solicitor. I don't need to know all the legal rules in terms of looking at a land registry or the terms around it or the covenants. My lawyer will do that. There's a saying in business: if you think good advice is expensive, try the cost of bad advice. So over the years, I've learned to pay a little bit more. And in the long term, that actually works out to be cheaper because I'm paying the right people to get the job done in the fastest and best possible way for me. So does that answer that particular one for you, Ash?
Fantastic. Yes. Good. Thank you. So in a nutshell, you found a property and the GDV now is quite high and the profit's quite high, and you didn't have to use any of your own money.
No, didn't have to use any of my own money. I use all outside money on that particular deal. I do that on a regular basis. If you think about it, most people are getting such a low rate of return on their money, between 1% and 3%. If you're offering them 100 or 200% more, so 100% more is 6%, 200% is 9%, 300% more. How many of you, if you were getting a 300% return on your money, would do it? I know I would.
Yeah,
300%?
No brainer.
So it's a no-brainer for most people. When I often talk about finance, and if I say to most people, what do the bank buy money at? Typically, it's 0.5% or 0.25%, and so let's say it's 1%, and they do a mortgage at 3%. I ask most people, what are the bank making? Most people say the bank are making 2%. That's how most people think, but they're not. They're making 200%. That's why they make so much money. So when they charge a credit card at 20%, they're making 1,800%, because that's a percentage. Most people just think of the numbers of the points, but it's not. It's the percentage. If I could get 200% on my money, I would be doing developments. I'd be getting 200% on my money. Yeah. I would be the bank. But for most people, if they're getting 100 or 200% greater return on what they're getting already, would be very happy to lend you the money. Now, this is the added part. When they lend you money, they've got security. They've got the security of the actual asset. They're not just lending you money, they're securing an asset. So they will get a first or a second charge on the actual amount. I go one bit further, and I will also offer a personal guarantee. I don't want my investors to ever lose out, so I will always pay them through my own proceeds. And if my development doesn't make as much as it's supposed to do, and we're on a joint venture, they will still get the profit that I'd actually told them at the outset, and I will take less. And the reason I do that is my investors will continue to invest with me. I'm in this for the long term, not for the short term. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense.
Excellent. So we've got a couple of questions here that I guess are pertinent. So Jay has asked, what is your typical pitch or intro you use when letting people know what you do? Obviously without asking for money, cap in hand, that type of thing.
Well, I have an elevator pitch, and it's probably going to take a little bit too long to explain the elevator pitch. But the elevator pitch is designed to create the sizzle. You tell people just enough information for them to want to find out a little bit more. And I have a 30 to 40 second pitch that I use depending on the person. I adapt it slightly. That basically says what I do and how I help people, and that's it. I never ask for money. People, if they have money and they're interested, will ask you how they can actually invest through you. What most people do in the marketplace is they ask for money. That's the worst thing you could ever do, is to ask for money. Because when you start asking, you become desperate. It's unprofessional. You just share with people what you do, and if they're interested, they'll ask you for more information.
We also have another question here. Would you apply for a pre-planning application and agree to purchase the property on this? So I'm guessing it's subject to pre-planning, but this is a pre-planning application, not a planning application. So I know that we don't really use pre-planning. It's more so the planning consultant and the architect and using the team. But I'll let you elaborate on that.
A pre-planning consultant basis is actually quite good for negotiating on a deal where you don't want the vendor to know what you know. So if you see a great plot and you want to know what you think you can get on it, you can do a pre-app. It's a pre-application. It's not registered anywhere. Nobody knows about it other than you and your architect. And if you get a very favorable pre-app report, that puts you in a very strong position with the vendor, because they don't know what you can get on the actual plot or the building. So yes, I do use that in certain occasions. Sometimes I'll even use it before I want to do a full application. And why would I do that? Well, if I do a pre-app, within the pre-app, it's informal. I can have a proper word with the actual planners, and I can adapt my main application so it's got a much higher rate of success of getting through on the first hurdle, first application. Does that answer that question?
Well, it answers it for me, but hopefully Priya.
It'd be nice if I've answered the question. You guys just respond and say yes, or you'd like me to elaborate a little bit more, because this is a webinar. I can only see some of your actual posts when you post. So if I don't know that you know what I've said, then I don't know if I've answered it. So thank you.
Priya said, thank you very much. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, Anaya, I think it is, or Ania, I totally understand why you need to do a 2-page cost of proposal. Well, it's not that we want to do 2 pages. It's just that we would prefer to do 1 page. It's just that everything that we need to do takes up 2 pages, and it's not actually a proposal. It's an analysis of the deal. It's our own homework, if you like, our due diligence. However, if I haven't yet bought the deal, I haven't gone out to 3 main contractors, as it's a large project, I've been offered, how do I get the most exact cost for the build and conversion cost without getting actual quotes? Good question.
It is a good question, and that really comes with experience and having a team around you. So part of my team is a contractor, it's an architect. I can have an informal conversation based on what I've been offered to get an idea how much it's going to build in that area. What are the service costs going to be? It's not a fag packet. You've got to have some knowledge and some experience, or tap into somebody that has that information. So if you're being offered a really large project and you don't have experience, the truth is you're not going to be able to. If you haven't got the team around you, you're not going to be able to work out the cost. You know, I often get people send me costs for building London at 110 to 120 pounds a square foot. You just can't build at that. You might be able to build at that if you're the builder and you're not taking any profit, but you can't build at that. If you're going to be a property developer, you're going to have to build at reasonable cost. Now, that sort of cost you might be doing outside London, but you certainly want to do it in London. So every area is different. Is it a house you're building? How many houses you're building? Is it flats? How many floors are the flats? Are you building underground car parking? Are there services there? Is there gas there? You know, what piping do you need to put in for the water? Do you need 3-phase electricity? There's so many different things that you need to be able to put into the equation. So you can't do it on the back of a fag packet. That's why the spreadsheet is so important. That's why having your architect on board. That's why having 2 or 3 preferred builders you know and you've worked with that can help you appraise a site. Because property is about 3 things. 1, numbers. 2, location. 3, exit strategy. And you have to have all of those 3 in your heart, in the palm of your hand, to know whether you're going to be doing something that's going to make you a profit or not. So it's those 3 things. Obviously, property is about relationships and about people, but the main thing is numbers, location, exit strategy. What am I buying it for? How much is it going to cost me to build? What am I going to sell it for? Is it in a great location? Is it a secondary location? So property is about location, location, location. It's knowing. And then lastly, exit strategy. Can I sell it? If I can't sell it, can I refinance it and get my money back out again? That's property, that's developing. So whether you develop, whether you refurbish, whether you buy and hold, those are the strategies that you always need to know. I hope that makes it a little bit. So
yeah. So Nia said it's a hotel conversion. We're planning for 15 to 18 apartments, which is quite a lot of difference. 15 to 18, that's a lot of money.
So let's say we look at this particular deal. It's a hotel conversion, and let's say we go for planning, and we'll do two costs, one for planning with 15 and one for planning for 18. But what's the purchase price? What's the stamp duty? What's the legal cost? What's the conversion cost? Do you need to put any additional services? Do you need three-phase in there? Do you need to increase the pipe work? Is this going to be done under PD, or is it going to be done as a new application?
Just explain PD for those who don't know.
So PD is permitted development, where there are certain buildings that allow you to convert straight from commercial to residential. So in the 15 to 18 apartments, is there any SIL payment? Is there any 106 payment? That's payments imposed by the local authority as your contribution to the area or the services. So this all comes down to numbers. What is the GDV? What do they sell for? You know, without having those numbers, it's almost impossible to say whether it works or not. I look at a lot of hotels, and one of my business partners has 16 hotels. So we know hotels really well. So, and we buy hotels, and we buy them typically for income, and we sell on the rooms to private investors. So we know the hotel structure really well. So without knowing those numbers, I couldn't say to you whether it's a good development or it's not a good development. Would it work better as 15 bigger apartments or 18 smaller apartments? Or would it work even better as 13 or 14 apartments? So that's part of your appraisal.
Or an apartment hotel.
Yeah.
Or an apartment hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll take some more questions. Where is the best place to reach out to divorcees or people that are ill, or relocating, targeted Facebook ads, etc.? Divorcees, maybe, I don't know. Over 50 nightclub, I don't know. Where are you going to find it? Some dodgy pub somewhere, I don't know. On the internet, maybe.
Divorce lawyer is a pretty good place to start.
Yeah.
So, so knowing a good divorce lawyer, which I know a few, unfortunately, or fortunately. So there's many places to actually find this. And again, you might want to do a Google search in your area for singles or networking for single people or divorced people, and you'll get a few ideas in the different area. The best place though is ads, places like Google ads or even Facebook ads, where you're trying to target specific people. But that's a whole different arena in terms of what we talk about. A few more questions here.
So Tom, where can you get planning to go from D1 place of worship, old church, to C3 residential? Well,
okay. So with planning, if you know the planning rules, sometimes to get the change of use that you want to, you have to go through a couple of hurdles or to get around the planning rules and guidelines. So again, your local architect or planning consultant will tell you whether it's easy in that particular area, because every area is different. Every area is different. So not one rule fits all. So sometimes you have to go from D1 to another usage and then go to C3. So it's not always in a straight line, but you might end up getting there at the end. So that's knowing your planning consultant and your architect, knowing the steps that you need to do to get, and that's part of your costing, because it might take you, instead of 6 months to get planning, 12 to 18 months. So that's part of your cost, and knowing what your overall cost is going to be, or how long it's going to take you to get planning.
Which is something you definitely want control of not to purchase, because you're going to have an extremely high holding cost for that, especially if you're going to use short-term bridging, and it would end up becoming long-term bridging.
Okay, so I've just seen this one. It says buy at 1.5 million, build and convert 3 million. So I'm not sure if that's 3 million all in, including purchase price of 4.5 million, because not clear enough. And it says GDV is approximately 1 million. So if you're,
I'm hoping that's maybe 11. I'm hoping that's 11.
Okay.
And have you missed off a one?
I'm not sure what those figures are, but based on those figures, then it certainly doesn't work.
Yeah, not on a GDV, yeah, lower than the cost. But I'm sure she's made a typo there.
Okay.
If you could just put those numbers in again, please, and GDV is 6 million.
Okay, so is it 4.5 million?
Yeah.
In total?
Does that include costs, legals, etc., planning, health and safety?
So again,
costs.
Just throwing numbers out without looking at, how long is it going to take to build? Has it got planning already? All of those parts actually need to be in there to be able to appraise it properly. And that's why we always look at a spreadsheet, because it takes the emotion out of the decision, because these are big numbers. So let me ask you a question. If you've never done a development before that cost 1.5 million, 3 million to actually build, if that's your first project, I would say right now it's going to be almost impossible for you to finance that unless you're doing it with somebody that's already done that kind of level. The banks are going to appraise who you are. They're not going to lend you money if you haven't done this kind of work before. They're just not.
So Linda's
investor won't lend you that money if you haven't done that before. They don't want to be your guinea pig.
No. Linda's just made a good question, a good comment. You do get a lot of people who just look at deals and can't make their mind up. Absolutely, 100%. I'm with you on that. So this is the reason that we have the deal analysis for our students, so that they have to do the homework and fill out the analysis. I have to do it as well. Emmanuel has to do it. We all have to do it, because the banks are going to want to see it, or your personal lender, whoever it might be, that's going to do the entrepreneur finance, shall we call it. So you need to know all of these numbers.
Annie has just posted a question: how do we start? If you're going to run a marathon, you're not going to get out your front door and run 26.4 miles the first time round. You might run a mile. The next time you might run a 2. You're going to build up to it. So you're not going to go from zero to a £6 million development. It's just not realistic. You can't go from 0 to 100 miles per hour without having any knowledge, any experience from that. You're going to have to build that up, and that takes time. So you want to start with smaller projects if you're doing it yourself. A simple refurbishment, a simple splitting of a house into 2 or 3 apartments. So you want to maybe do smaller projects where you're building your portfolio. If you want to participate in something bigger, then you're going to have to do it with somebody that's already done it. Just the same way the bank would expect you to do it, to have that knowledge, have that experience, done it a few times, have some assets behind you. The bank's going to want to look at what assets that you have. Every time I do an application, they want to see my asset and liability statement.
Okay, good man. Thank you. Thanks, Anaya. All right, so I think that's all the questions at the moment. We're just going to here's an interesting real estate clock, not something put together by us, put together by some consultant company. And it looks around. People always say, oh, when do I start? When do I start? Do I start in a boom market? Do I look in a recovery market or recession or that type of thing? So at the moment, there's not excess funding, but increasing funding, if you like. Funding is getting a little bit easier. It's getting a lot easier with entrepreneurs out there at the moment. You'll be surprised once you start saying the right things or not saying the wrong things, which is most cases. And we said at the start, you've got to use 2 ears and 1 mouth. If you're going to go and blah, 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 nobody really wants to know what the hell you're doing, because they just think that this person, I can't work with this person. But if you listen intently about some of the words that people use, and you'll start to work out what's important to them, what it is that they want to gain from this, how can they do this, and how you're going to help them. And especially if you're involved with somebody like Emmanuel and myself, we have lots of students who actually drop our name and say that they work with us, because we do actually end up working with them. And, Tom, who's away in New York at the moment, You know, he's asked Emmanuel, and we went out to see the vendors, and that's helping him because he's actually said, look, my business partners are coming along. Nobody really wants to deal with one person. They want to know that you have a team with you. That team doesn't have to be a team of people on your books that you pay them on a day in, day out and sit in an office or anything like that. People understand that development is not like that. So why don't people invest in property? Number one, because they're scared. And the reason they're scared is because they don't have the knowledge. So people are scared of losing money. They're not, you know, motivated to make money. And that's the wrong mindset for a start. And people just it's because they don't have the knowledge. It's like, you know, if I said to you, go and get in a brand new Ferrari right now and hammer it around the block, you'd be like, oh, no. The simple thing is because you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the experience. Fear, again, it's a big one. Ignorance, again, the two things that we've just spoken about there. You just don't know. And you just don't have time. So sometimes people say, I don't have enough time. And yet, you know, on Saturday, you'll go down a pub or you'll go you'll go down the park, you'll lay in the sun or lay in the rain in England or whatever it might be. So people make excuses. So no time, just don't know, ignorance and fear. No time is really just an excuse. Money, well, we just explained to you that you don't actually need money. And I want it now. So people will sometimes think that they can have it right now without actually going out and learning how to do it, without doing the hard yards and without meeting people and building up this team. You will need to build up this team, but it doesn't take that long as you're focused and passionate about it. And once you do get this team, believe me, things become so much easier. Property is it's almost like that real estate, like that chart that I showed you that suddenly rose up. You'll start flat for a little bit and then all of a sudden bang. But the problem is there's 4 stages of learning and most people give up at stage 1. And stage 1 is when you just don't know anything about anything. So you just don't know what the hell's going on. You don't know, you have no time, no money, ignorance, fear. All of these things are going through your head. Until you get to stage 3 and stage 4, when it becomes like second nature. Think of driving a car, you know, people who've been driving for years can eat a sandwich, have a drink and drive with their foot or their feet and with the window down and talking on the phone, although most of that is illegal, but they could do that pretty much and they could do it for mile after mile. But when you first start driving, you get in there and you freeze. You're like, shit, what is this thing? How come there are 3 pedals down there? What's the gear stick? Which way do I turn it? Why is it cranking and going backwards when I want to go forward? Why is this guy next to me shouting at me that I need to turn left and mirror signal, shoulder signal, whatever it is? I can't remember. But these are the things. Most people give up at stage 1, which is when you first get in that car and you start to drive. It's like, oh, no, I can't do this. It's too hard for me. So you need to step out of your comfort zone and push further and further each and every time. And people will look at this clock here. Oh, when do I get in? And everyone will look on there and think, okay, saturated market, burnt fingers, minimal construction, stabilizing rents, easy find. Oh, no. They'll find an excuse when not to get into the market. There is no right time to get in. There is no right time. You just need to get in now. So we've been talking a lot. We've given you a lot of good information here, answered lots of questions. And Linda's saying that some in London, it's quite easy to find investment. Okay. Agree to a certain extent. Sometimes they charge you up front. One wanted $5,000. Well, I've had people ask for 40 and 50 grand. As part of the deal. So London can be like that, but that's if you're dealing with agents. But we can teach you how to find stuff direct to vendors in London as well. So we run a course and we're offering buy one, get one free at the moment. And we're keeping the course to a certain, an affordable level because we know that there are courses out there where people pay thousands to go to and you don't really get the value that you think you're going to get. And Emmanuel has entrenched in me that you must provide value. So we might even provide a little bit too much information on the day, but you're going to get a whole load of information. You're going to know exactly where to start. Somebody said, where do I start? You're going to know where to finish, as in your end strategy. So we offer a full day property development masterclass. includes all the forms and all the option contracts that you need to do the business. And these are valued at easy way over £5,000 if you were to go and get a good solicitor to do these. And we obviously, like Emmanuel says, we don't pay for cheap advice because it will cost us a fortune at the other end. We also set up a private Facebook group, and we have a few people on there already who we private mentor. And this is a private group, so there's not going to be anyone coming on there, and you can ask questions without feeling like you're asking a silly question, etc. So, that's why we've set that up. And some people say it's worth way more than £2,000 a year, so we'll just lowball it. Property development extensive calculator, the one we've spoken about, produced by our team, a CPA accountant, and the cost to us was way over £1,000. So it will cost you that to get that done. Script for agents and vendors, these are worth in excess of £2,000. Again, it could cost you £200,000 if you don't get it right on a deal. Plus much, much more included. And we're going to go through microflats. We're going to go through, the old school HMOs, but we're going to spend more time on microflats and converting and looking at, deals that people like and easy to get through with financing. Stuff like turning Victorian properties into flats and this type of thing, or micro flats, or we also look at commercial and stroke residential, and maybe swapping the two out, the goods and the bads of both, and how to make them all good for you. And we'll also talk about how to find properties via direct to vendors using things like land registry and this type of thing. And then getting building deals, and also showing you how to get finance as well. So this would, a value, it's probably worth way over £10,000 because Emmanuel, I know that, some people have had a couple of hours with him and it's cost them over £1,000, and that's cheap. That's to his friends. And I'd hate to think what his daily rate is now, probably that 10 grand. So we offer you 100% money back guarantee as well. So if by the first break you feel that this is not for you, or you feel that we're not for you, or it's just not a fit, you think, man, I'm in way over my head, what the hell's going on? We'll give you money back, no questions asked, say see you later, and maybe even offer you a chat afterwards if you need that. So yes, contracts. We will show you contracts that we've used. We'll show you offer letters, how to actually make a professional offer that we use. We'll talk about listed buildings. Listed buildings is kind of something that we really stay away from, simply because it's such a long, drawn out process. So a special offer today for those here. We're going to give you buy one, get one free. So if you want to bring a friend, you can split the cost. Or if you want to bring a friend, you can say that they come for free. It could be your mum, it could be your dad, it could be your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, your grandmother, whoever it is. We have all sorts of people turn up, believe me. Full one-day property class, all included, all the forms, contracts, options needed. So I'm talking purchase options, I'm talking lease options and this type of thing. Obviously the calculator as well, private Facebook group, plus a load more with the agents and vendors, all included. And we're going to do this, and this will be a price that won't last for long, because Emmanuel's already had a dig at me for this, but we've explained that we're trying to help people. So we're doing this for 2 people for $497 plus VAT. And I don't think you can get much better value out there today than that. You've got to remember that Emmanuel, myself, I have over 30 properties. I have a portfolio of rent-to-rents and SAs making me over 25 grand. I've just taken another one, so add another 1,200 quid a month to that. Been doing this since 2006. You got Emmanuel with a portfolio of 50 million pounds. And it's real. It's not some bullshit that people, like some people out there, make up. This is real. 30 million of his own, and he's a true professional when it comes to joint venturing, because he has a portfolio that he shares worth 20 million. So a total portfolio of 50 million pounds, and he's built up most of that only in the last few years, because Emmanuel will also tell you about the hard times that he's had and how he actually got himself out of that. So most of this portfolio has actually been built up in recent times, not in the last 25 years. So purchase today and you can bring a friend for free, no charge for your business partner, spouse or friend. And you never know, it might just change their life too. We have people who bring friends along and they turn out to be, I won't say talents because you don't need a talent, but they turn out to be so motivated and so strong-willed, and they have such a strong purpose and definition of what it is that they need, that they go on to make a load of money. And sometimes they make a lot more than the person who actually brought them along. So your ROI is 1 month profit from your first deal. It could be much shorter than that. Your ROI, it could be a deal that you bring in 50 grand. So, it's like 1%. It could be a deal where you bring in $250,000. And if it's a deal that you need help with, look to us. That's what we're there for. We can help you. You won't get 50% of the deal or 20% of the deal. Just so you know, you'll get a handsome finder's fee. So, it could be worth your while. But the one thing is that you'll be part of the process and you'll learn as you go along. So that then you can honestly say that, yes, you work with a couple of developers and this is what you're doing. And you can start to tell your story, and your story becomes much more credible and you get much more credibility, and it becomes, I wish I could illustrate it now, but it becomes so much easier. When you get that tingle in your head and your body and you've got that deal and you go, I've done it. I've broken the ice. I'm there. And you might get 20, 30, 40, 50K deposited into your bank from the solicitor, or 200K or whatever it might be. Some of those big deals that we're talking about, especially the pub and that type of thing, those numbers are going to be much higher than that. But you need to start somewhere. So how to invest right now? Okay, so what will happen is there'll be a little screen that pops up to the right of your screen or something like that that says a 2-for-1 offer, should I say. And it has a small logo there that says, goal so big you get uncomfortable telling small-minded people. Now, I'm not trying to put down small-minded people because they have to do certain things in the world that we don't want to do. But it's trying to make you see that you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone, maybe out of the small-minded people, and don't tell them what you're doing, the small-minded people. Tell the people that you know are going to be interested, the people that can help you. And you never know, you might just find yourself on a property developer list very soon. So all you got to do is click Get Started. It will take you to a Get Started button, not Book Now. We look forward to helping you create wealth from property, because we're not about get rich quick. This is about helping you build a sustainable business and the sustainable brand within yourself. This is not do one deal, fall over, or do one deal and get 20 grand and buy yourself a car. This is about reinvesting that money and making yourself wealthy over time. This is your retirement fund. This is more than your retirement fund. Your retirement fund, when I talk about retirement fund, the retirement fund is taking care of your bills, paying your day-to-day life. Well, your wealth is going to help you create legacy for your kids, create legacy for your wife, your husband, your friends, your uncle, whoever it is that you want to create a legacy for. And it might just not be just about money. You don't want to just leave money to people or help people with money. It might be that it gives you time and freedom to be able to, go and help people. I know that I still do that for my grandfather. We don't have to give him money. He just wants love and company every now and then. And my grandmother died of dementia a year ago in July, and it really cut him up, and it cut us all up. But, we think about the life that she had and how wonderful it was, but it's harder for the person that's left. And, we have that time and freedom to be able to go and spend with that. And, I've got 2 amazing kids, 4-year-old and a 3-year-old. I didn't get married until I was 38. And I've got an amazing wife. And everything I do is for them. It's to make sure that their future is secure. We just moved to a new house. And we've got 5 acres of field, and my son just goes out there and get covered in mud and crap every opportunity he has, and I just love that for him. And my daughter's the same. And property has created this. That's the good thing about it. When I came here to England, I was getting paid like 15 grand a year, and I was I was working in an IT recruitment company, and I said to myself at the desk when my boss is hammering me between 7 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock at night, and said, you got to do this, you got to do it. I'm like, man, this is not for me. I've got greater things that I need to do. But I didn't go to somewhere and said, you have to help me. I went and I found out what I needed to do, and I did it. And action is the big thing that you need to do. And, everyone talks about action, but if you don't take action, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. If you want to go out on Saturday night with your spouse or your mates and you want to go and see a movie and you want to go for a meal afterwards or something like that and have a drink and have a good time, and Sunday relax with other friends or family, you're not going to do it unless you get out of bed. It's the most basic thing. You need to get off your backside. So hit that button if you want to join us. It takes PayPal, it takes credit cards, it takes debit cards. It just doesn't take shirt buttons. So go ahead. Also join us on our Facebook group. It's, as you can see on the screen, facebook.com/Wealth and Success Academy. Both Emmanuel and I put a lot of stuff on there every now and then. You can see the course, is the next one is on June the 3rd, which is a Saturday. And it's a special day because you'll be joining me for my birthday. My birthday is June the 3rd. And everyone says, why do you want to work on your birthday? To me, it's not working. It's having fun. And believe me, Saturday night, I'll be out with my wife and we'll have a nice dinner and do what we've got to do. So, yes, thank you for those who have already booked. We look forward to seeing you. Please do email me the name of the person that you're going to bring when you know. If you don't already know, that's great, because we will provide lunch as well. We just need to know numbers for that. So let's get back to Emmanuel and myself so you can. And we'll go from there. Thanks, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, as always. And I think everyone's learned a lot from your great advice, as always. As we always do, we get good feedback.
So I just want to make things a little bit clearer for people. I'm very heavily committed in my own property and my own developments and projects, and you've twisted my arm to do this training, and this is the only day I'll be training this year on this particular subject. So those of you who want to participate, want to get some information firsthand from somebody that's developing on a regular basis throughout the year, and somebody that has the freedom to do what they want, when they want, wherever they want, with whoever they want, I'm there to help you guys, and Ash will be there too. But it is only going to be the date that we'll be training this year to do that. Just because of my own commitments and my travel commitments. I'm off to Thailand in a few weeks after that for over a month. I've got my niece that's actually that's having a baby. I'm going to be in LA for another 2 or 3 months this year. So my time is going to be quite limited this year. So if you do want to do it and you can move your schedule around, then I think it'd be a great time for you to do that. So great speaking to you all and your questions, and hopefully we've given you some value this evening.
Somebody has said that they can't see the link, so I'll put that up for you now. I'll just put that up for you. Let me just find that quickly. And here we go. So you can go to this link here. There you go. And that's where you can book right there. So hopefully you can see that. Thanks, Emmanuel.
Pleasure.
Have a good evening, and I'll chat to you tomorrow.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.